In this video, I'm going to show you how to install vinyl plank flooring, and this vinyl plank flooring is the Lifeproof brand that's going to go directly on concrete, but the installation on concrete or on standard subfloor is the same. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about DIY to save a ton of money, so be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So installing this stuff is incredibly easy, but let me show you how to do it. Before we start the actual installation, I just wanted to go over a little bit about this luxury vinyl. So this exact one is the Lifeproof, like I mentioned earlier. We have the underlayment already attached to the back of it, so we don't have to install underlayment. And this is the IsoCore technology backing, so it's going to be a very comfortable backing. And also there's a 22 millimeter layer, that's the wear layer on top of this luxury vinyl. And so what that means is with this flooring, there's actually a lifetime residential warranty and a 20-year commercial warranty, which is very good. And just so you know, this video is not sponsored by this product. It just happened to be the best one that I found for the price. And if you want to check this actual plank out, there's going to be tags of this on this video. You can check it out for yourself. And also, we have a transition strip that is not made by Lifeproof. It's going to be a 4-in-1 transition strip, so it has the T-molding and the option to transition straight to concrete. So I'll show you how to install that here in just a bit. This is 100% waterproof, which is a huge selling point. So if you're installing this in a basement or in a garage or workshop like I'm doing, this is going to be one of the better choices out there. You don't want to install hardwood floor or anything like that in a damp area. It has the ability to be cleaned with a steam mop, which is huge. The greatest selling point to this type of flooring is really the ease of installation. It's a click lock connection between the planks, and it's going to be something that any DIYer or even a professional would appreciate. And if you're curious about the exact color, it's called sterling oak, and the T-mold is called flint gray. So this is not made by Lifeproof, just so you know, but you can check that out as well because it's going to be tagged on this video too. So let's get to installing this stuff. Here are all the tools that we'll need to install this vinyl plank flooring. As you can see, most of these tools are tools that people are going to have around their homes. These handful of things here probably not, but let me go over what you'll need to install this vinyl plank flooring. A standard carpenter's pencil, or any pencil for that matter, a speed square, tape measure, a tapping block to get our joints tight. We got spacers here, and you necessarily wouldn't need these per se, but they typically, all these come in a kit. So a piece of the flooring can actually work as a spacer as well. Then we got a pull bar to pull the vinyl plank flooring together once we're up against the wall, a rubber mallet, and a utility knife for cutting the floor. And then this is optional. This is an oscillating tool. You necessarily wouldn't have to have this, but I'm going to show you how to cut it using both of these, and you'll see this is very easy to use. And you could also use a jigsaw, skill saw, and a table saw to cut this as well, but I just want to show you the easy DIY option here. Here are some other items to consider: knee pads to protect your knees while you're down on the floor, gloves to protect your hands from the sharp edges of the flooring, ear protection while using the tools, and eye protection while using the tools. In order to calculate the amount of flooring you'll need for your project, you need to figure up the square footage of the area that you need to cover. So let's say for easy math, you have a 10-foot wide room that's 10 foot long. So you would simply do 10 foot by 10 foot, which gives us 100 square feet. And then we need a 10% waste factor in order to figure for the cuts and waste. Then if we take 100 and times it by 0.1 or 10%, for waste, that gives us 110 square feet total that we need to purchase of flooring. And then we need to consider how much flooring comes in a box. So we need to round up to the nearest full box in order to order all the flooring that we need. And then you need to consider any transition strips or accessories that you'll need for your project. When installing your vinyl planks, it's a good idea to open up a couple boxes or even a few boxes to pull from, so that way there's more variation throughout the floor. I'm going to be installing this luxury vinyl or vinyl plank flooring here in this half bath. As you can see, we had drywall mud that got onto the floor while we were finishing this drywall. There's dust on the floor and whatnot. And one big thing about installing this vinyl plank flooring is making sure we don't have any high humps in the floor. So anywhere where we have drywall mud, we need to make sure we take a scraper and scrape that off. Or if you have a standard putty knife, you can use that as well. And also, because we're on concrete compared to a standard OSB subfloor, you might have some high voids that you may want to knock off with some kind of concrete grinder before you get started. So you want to keep that in mind. So the gist of this is make sure we don't have any high humps that we need to knock off out of the way. I had one right here around this pipe coming up through the concrete, so I did have to grind that down before I got started. It's important to vacuum up any dust before installing the vinyl plank flooring. For the first row of flooring, I have to cut the start here to go around this door jamb. And with that being said, I also need to make sure I'm spaced off the wall correctly. And we want to lay this in an orientation to where this tongue is sticking out and then the flush side is going up against the wall. And this is where we'll have to take the spacers. And I'm going to use the 1/4 inch side to place right up against the wall and to place it down towards the floor so we're spaced off the wall correctly. And I'm also going to take a spacer and space it off the wall here as well. In order to cut this to come into this door opening where I want it, my door is going to sit here and it's going to be an in swing door. And I know I want to come in 3/4 of an inch to where I want to stop the flooring. So to do that, since I'm spaced correctly, I need to measure over how much I need to come in, which ends up being an inch, a 1/4 inch off the wall plus 3/4 inch into the door. So I'm going to come over 1 inch and then I'm going to make a mark on the flooring. And then I'm going to measure up a 1/4 inch for expansion here. So we need to come over that far to cut out around this door. I'm going to cut a little off this corner to start this first row. So if this was just a straight wall like most people start, you're not going to have to cut this. I'm going to be using the oscillating tool in a speed square in order to make this cut around the door opening. I'm just going to use my speed square as a guide and just follow right along that mark that we made. And I don't want to go any further than this mark. So in order to do that, I'm going to turn this on and trace right up to that mark. Now that that's scored really well, I'm going to cut from this way. Now we can simply just bend this and break it right off. So as you can see, that stuff cuts really easy compared to hardwood floor and tile. I'm going to take the piece that we just cut, make sure my spacers are in place, and then I'm going to slide it right into position. And something you're going to want to consider whenever you have a door opening like that, sometimes that cut's going to be exposed. So you might want to undercut the drywall here so that way we can slide it to be a little bit closer, because if not, you're going to see that corner after the door is installed if your opening is really tight. But I allow enough room around my openings, I should be able to adjust it with no problem. So just keep that in mind. For the next piece, I'm going to place the spacers up against the wall first. I'm then going to take the flooring and then we're going to place it on top of this lip and kind of click it right into place, like so. And once we have it about where we need it, we'll take our rubber mallet and tap on it to get it to go together really nice. So as you can see, that's a nice seam. And then to get these to line up perfectly, I'm going to take my tapping tool. I'm going to place it right against that lip and just tap it until we're perfectly flush. So just like that. As you can see, that is very nice joint. Then we can take our spacers and get them back into place. So as you can see, this stuff kind of makes itself straight as you go, because once it locks together, it stays square with each other, which is very nice, makes it very easy to install. So you don't necessarily need chalk lines for this stuff. For the last piece in this row, I'm stopping right here at this mark in order to transition back to concrete, because there's no use to run it clear back under the stairs because I can't get back there anyways, really. So I'm stopping it right here. So an easy way to mark this, if this is how you would install it typically, we're just going to turn it around to where the edge that goes against the wall is actually facing us, and we're going to line our end up with that mark. And then if we're up against the wall, we would just space it as we typically would for the 1/4 inch, and then do the same method. So we're going to line it right up there, come over here, and then we're going to mark on our piece of flooring the edge. And this is the part that we're going to cut off. So now I'm going to simply take my speed square and we're going to cut this off with our utility knife. In order to make this straight cut, I'm simply going to take my speed square, line it up with that mark that we made for the end. Then I'm going to use my utility knife and simply cut right down the edge of that piece of flooring and the speed square at the same time, like so. After that's scored really well, we're going to flip it around and continue the score on that line. Now that we've got a straight line there, I'm going to score it really well in order to finish off that cut. I'm now going to snap it right off, and then I'm going to take my utility knife just to cut that underlayment on the back. And see, that is very easy to cut compared to other flooring, so very nice. So let's go ahead and get this installed. With the cut side facing towards the end of the run, I'm just going to snap this last piece right into place. Now that our first row is down, we're going to go back to the left side of this run to where we started and work our way back to the right side where we ended. For the second row and all of the remaining rows, we need to make sure that we stagger at least 8 inches from the joints. So wherever we have a butt joint, we want to make sure we stay at least 8 inches. So right there will work just fine. So in order to mark it, we're just going to hold it about 8 inches away from the joint. Then we're just going to mark the end in which we need to cut it. And we simply just cut and rinse and repeat that method. And we also want to make sure that we don't have any less than an 8-inch piece at the end. So we want to make sure that we cut this so we don't have that at the end of the run. In order to snap in the second row, the previous row has this groove right here. So we need to make sure that we lay our piece right into that groove and line it up where we want it. Keep our joint tight and just lay it right down like so, and then give it a little tap to make sure that we're in. As you can see, there's a hairline crack going right down that joint. So we're just going to take our tapping tool, place it on the edge, and just tap that together. I'm now going to show you how to snap in the next piece. For the next piece that's going to go in between the previous row and our first piece, in order to snap it in, we're going to line it up with the edge and slide it right into that groove like we did on the piece a moment ago. Then we're going to lay it right into place like so. And it's going to click, and then we're going to take our rubber mallet just to snap it into the previous piece. And then in order to close up that gap, we're just going to use the tapping tool to do so. And now we continue running the rest of this room until we get up to this wall. I'm now at a point where I got to cut around a wall. And something else I'd like to mention at this time, if you have to start with a ripped piece as your first row so you don't end up with a really thin piece here, that's something you're going to want to do. I already measured ahead of time, so I knew it would be bigger than a half, When I say half, the width of this floor is 8 5/8. So I want to make sure I have at least a 5-inch piece here, which I have 6. And then against this back wall, I should end with a full piece because I already pre-measured everything. So again, you want to try to cut the first piece or rip down the first piece so you don't have these thin pieces. So if I take a measurement here, I got 6 1/4. If I come down here, I got 6 1/4 light. So it's running pretty well square. So now I'm going to rip these down 1/4 inch shy. So we're going to rip these down to about 6 inches to finish this up. And whenever we measure up to this wall, same idea. We want a 1/4 inch gap for expansion and contraction. So we got 20 1/2. So we're going to cut it 20 1/4. And then we're going to come down to 6 inches to go around this wall. Here's the piece I got to cut to go around that wall. You want to make sure you're oriented in the right position. So I know this is the tongue side that's going to face away from where this butts up to the previous run. We're going to come over 20 1/4 and make our mark right here, right on the plank itself. And we know that we need 6 inches. So we're going to measure up 6 inches and make a mark right here. And then we're going to come down here and measure up 6 inches and make our mark as well. And something to remember here, I'm going to cut this with the oscillating tool to show you that you have that option. You could also score this with the utility knife like we've been making on the straight cuts. You can use a table saw, a skill saw, anything you have on hand you can cut this with that's for wood really. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to show you the oscillating tool and the circular saw method just so you can see them. So I'm going to begin by simply taking my speed square and lining right up to that mark. Now with that line cut, I'm going to take a straight edge. I'm just going to use a 4-foot level for this, which you're going to want to use any type of straight edge you got. Whatever you have is fine, even a chalk line if you have to. Now I'm going to line that up with our marks. Then we're going to use that as a guide to rip it down. Now we're just going to snap that as we did the other cross cuts. So now that one's cut, I'm going to show you how to rip one down with a circular saw. Same idea, we're going to measure up 6 inches off each edge or whatever measurement you'll need to rip it down to. I'm then going to take my straight edge and mark it from mark to mark. And if you're wondering, this stuff is 4 foot long, by the way. Then we're going to take our pencil and make a straight line. I'm now just going to take a circular saw and cut right down that line. And really that's all there is to cutting the vinyl. If you do use the circular saw method, as you can see, it can chip the edge if you cut too fast. So watch for that. The oscillating tool does not leave any of that. To install these ripped pieces, we need to use what's called the pull bar. And with the pull bar, it's going to go right behind the flooring. And then we're going to tap it with either the mallet, or my favorite is just to use a standard framing hammer, because that way you can get more of a hit in on it. And there's also felt on the back of this, so that way it doesn't damage the floor, just so you know. So I'm going to start by placing this piece in just like we would any other piece. So now in order to get this gap out, we're going to use the pull bar, place it right here up against that, and we're going to take our hammer and then just tap it like so, and as you can see, that's going to pull that crack shut. So similar idea to using this tapping block, except it gets in behind it because clearly we can't get that in there. So now we're going to install the rest of these rip pieces. A good method that I've found for cutting the vinyl plank flooring around a pipe is to take the cap off the pipe, place the flooring up to the pipe, and then mark the edges, and then use the cap to finish marking on top of the vinyl pieces. To cut this circle out for the 3-inch pipe for our toilet, I'm simply going to use the oscillating tool. A cut like this would be very difficult to use the utility knife to cut that out, which you could. It would just take some time. So I'm going to use the oscillating tool just to go right around that. And you can also use a hole saw as well, but it would be an expensive purchase just to buy a hole saw just to make that cut. So I'm just going to use this oscillating tool. And yes, it's going to be bigger than the 3-inch pipe, but I need a little play around there to put my closet flange on for my toilet. I'm now going to finish it up by cutting the underlayment, that's the padding of the flooring, with the utility knife. That's the hole in what it's going to look like after it's snapped together. And you got to remember, the closet flange is going to cover that up pretty well. So you don't have to get that perfect, just as long as it's pretty darn close. As you just seen, the installation of this stuff is extremely fast compared to other floorings. And something that I wanted to point out, right here is going to be a little vanity. It's going to be a 24-inch wide vanity. It's not real heavy, but technically, if you have a vanity, you're supposed to install that first and then cut the flooring around it. And that's what Lifeproof recommends. So I just wanted to point that out, so if you noticed that in this video. And now I need to install the door before I show you how to install the transition strips. If you'd like to see a detailed video installing an interior door, check out the video link in the top right hand corner of the screen or in the description below. I'm now going to go over the transition strip. This is the 4-in-1 kit, so this should cover just about any transition that you need. And this is not luxury vinyl or vinyl by any means. This is just simple laminate flooring. It's just so you know. So with this is going to be the track in which you're going to either put your T-mold in, and this is the T-mold that's going to transition to something that's on the same plane. So if you're going, let's say, from hardwood to this flooring that's elevated the same, this is what's going to snap right in the middle of this track. But in my case, I need to have what's called a hard surface reducer. So this is going to clip in on this side of the track, and then this T-mold is going to be placed on this side of the track. And then that's going to transition from the vinyl down to the concrete floor. And then this is another transition that can be like a reducer as well. And then you have this cover that can snap on top of this for whatever reason. And we also have the screws and the anchors in which we're going to need to anchor this to the concrete. First, need to install the rail onto the floor. So I'm going to measure in between here to get an exact measurement. And we got 23.5 light. So we got to cut that to length first. I'm first going to measure it to length and mark it. Now in order to cut this, I'm just going to use 10 snips. I'm now going to lay the rail into position to where it's going to be installed. And in this case, we can lay it from this edge to this edge, and that's going to be about where we need it. So now I'm going to mark 4 holes in which I need to drill out to anchor this. I'm going to use my hammer drill with a masonry bit, and this is an 1/8 inch bit, and I'm going to drill out these holes in order to put these anchors. And this is a hammer drill. I'm now going to shop vac this dust up. I'm going to use adhesive to place into each one of these holes before I put the plugs. Now I'm going to place the plugs right down into those holes. As you can see, I'm hammering them down flush with the concrete. I'm going to place a thin layer of adhesive right where that strip is going. I'm now going to place that strip right where it originally was sitting. And as you can see, I'm placing the screws through the rail and into those plugs. I now need to cut the T-mold to length, and also make sure that you cut around this door stop, because that's going to have to come out and get covered. So it isn't just from the width of the rail, you need to come around into the side of the jamb. The width on the inside here is 24 and about 1/8. And then in here, like we already measured, is about 23 and 1/2. I'm going to cut this to length to 24 and 1/8 first. I'm going to cut this square to make things easy. And a miter saw works great here, but since we already had the oscillating tool out, I'm just going to cut it with that. I'm now going to come over 3/8 of an inch to cut around that door stop. And I know I'm going halfway to get around that, so I got to cut that notch out. I'm now going to do the same to this side. And I know this piece, to reduce it down to the concrete, is the same length as this shorter end. So I'm going to just line that up and mark it and cut it. And now, as you can see, it's going to give us a nice transition off of that luxury vinyl. This one that ends at more of a blunt is more for carpet than it is what I'm doing here to concrete. First, going to snap this piece into place. I'm now going to place the T-mold right into this part of the track. As you can see, that gives you a decent transition there. The other transition strip that I gotta place is where these vinyl planks end and go to that concrete. So we gotta do the same thing that we did at the door, except this is gonna go wall to wall and end this room back there. Now that the transition strips are done, I can remove all of the spacers and install the baseboard. After removing all of the spacers, I'm now going to install the baseboard around the room. And if you need to see a detailed video on how to install a baseboard, check out the link in the top right hand corner of the screen, or check the description below and I'll show you step by step how to install baseboard. And here's the finished product of the half bath, and as you can see, it turned out really nice. If you would like to see a detailed video on how to install hardwood floors, check out this video. It'll help you out.